Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the Koppenbergcross, the first round of the X2O trophy, which obviously took place on the Koppenberg in some heroic conditions, rain, mud. It's probably the toughest edition we have seen on the new course, and with me here to discuss that is Issam.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Start lists were not great, especially on the women's side, which is understandably because the European Championships are this weekend, a far more important race, especially for the women with just 2 days of recovery between arguably the hardest race on the calendar. Some might say Namur, but for me definitely the Koppenberg, certainly in these circumstances, makes sense. But on the men's side, most of the guys that we would expect there were there, only Gerben Kuipers and Laurens Reek from the absolute top guys were missing. The fastest start, which is defined by the rider to top the Koppenberg first, was for a surprising name, Theo Thomas, not Loris Rouillet, as the Belgian broadcasters announced had the best start, but as expected, he quickly fell through the field. Dan de Looks was on a flyer in the first lap, probably fueled by the anger of the non-selection. He took the lead. Where were the big names? Well, on the first ascent of the Koppenberg, Nys slipped and needed to set foot on the ground. This caused issues for Ronhaar, Van Haar and Vanthourenhout. Iserbyt had a bit of a slower start. Throughout the first lap, Nys moved to the front together with Ronhaar, and they joined Looks. We had three leaders. Iserbyt, Vanthourenhout and Van Haar were together in a second group. At the end of the first lap, Nys opened the gap. He rode away and built a 20-ish second lead on Vanthourenhout, Vanthourenhout, Van Haar and Iserbyt, I must say, who moved forward together. They overtook Looks and later they caught up to Ronhaar as well. Ronhaar then made a mistake, got stuck in a net and dropped back. From there we had an interesting game. Nys kept his lead between 10 and 20 seconds until at the end of the second lap he made a mistake. He crashed. Iserbyt saw this as a sign for him to play all or nothing and try and close that gap. The gap went from 27 seconds all the way back to some 10 seconds, but just after the pits on the steep hill, Iserbyt tried to close that gap by riding the steep hill. He failed, and then we saw something which we basically never see in a cyclocross race. His bike rolled downwards and he was going the wrong way on the course. That was game over for the chase. Nys went on to take victory, and from there on, behind there was still a sprint. That one was... Iserbyt, I think, thought he had it in the bag, but he didn't. Van Haar overtook him on the final ascent of the Koppenberg and ended second, with Iserbyt taking third. Nys makes it 10 wins for the Nys dynasty on the Koppenberg. His dad Sven won here 9 times, Issam, and it looks like he just rode with all the experience that his dad had in his career today.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was a strong race from his side. The start was not perfect, and then from there, on a course like this, it's difficult to keep yourself calm. But he did just that and was at the front in no time. And then from there, it was a bit of a nice show, and then the others had to kind of work their way into that show and see if they could have a role in it. And Iserbyt definitely was one of the main guys that tried to get back to Nys, and in the end, I think it was a lap too short for him to get to Nys. But then you also had the issue then of Van der Haar being there and being very strong, and in the end Van der Haar showed that he was the stronger guy with that last sprint on the Koppenberg, which seems to suit Van der Haar quite well, to be honest. He has good memories sprinting up the Koppenberg in the last lap. But if you just look at the race of Thibau, very mature ride on a course which is very tough. There were some questions if, because of his age, he's still a young guy, how would he deal with such a tough course? Because there is obviously this idea of the youngsters not being able to play a lot with these type of tough races, that they are not able to deal with it that well. But Thibau just showed that he can definitely deal with a very difficult Koppenberg cross, and I think that he a very good race, very strong, and in the end definitely the deserved winner, and it's probably going to give him a boost towards one of the bigger goals, the European Championships in this weekend.
I would say the point of difference for Nys today was his technique. I think purely on the power, Iserbyt and Van der Haar were a bit better. On the ascents, they seemed to be climbing faster. I clocked it a couple of times, they gained a couple of seconds there, but you could also visually see it on the broadcast. And the downhills, Nys had more confidence, more commitment to the ruts. Yes, he crashed once, but that's normal. How many times do we see Iserbyt, Vanthourenhout and Van der Haar slip on that super slippery, muddy section at the end of the downhill? Like, you could just see that Nys, generally speaking, was better there and gained his time there, which allowed him to lose time elsewhere. I do think we get a different race if Iserbyt doesn't make that mistake by trying to ride the steep climb after the pits. It was a super high risk, very low reward move by him. He didn't remotely make it close to the top. I don't think what he was thinking there. I don't know what he was thinking there, thinking he could ride that. But if he just walks there and commits to what everybody else is doing, I think there's a 60% chance that he catches up to Nys with Van der Haar and we get a different cross.
Yeah, he definitely slimmed his chances with that move, and I think that he was just again in sort of a mode of being too eager to get back, and it's probably that mentality of if I stay on my bike, I will gain more time in the end. Definitely didn't play out that way, and in the end, I think it's just the gap was just a little bit too big for Van der Haar and Iserbyt to get back and close. I think it was just a little too late. And Nys, faded a little bit in the last lap, but he had the gap to do that, and I think that was the most important part. I said before that it was maybe a lap too long, but in the end it was an hour race, and the race was quite tough, I would say. The circumstances were very tough, and the interesting part of this race, actually, what I felt is, despite the fact that we had such a hard course, we still had the top three within 20 seconds, and then we had Cameron Mason behind him with 40 seconds. So it was close in a way, and I think that's interesting to see, and it kind of shows the idea that we had on the men's side, that the competition is quite close, the field is quite close together, and they're quite evenly matched in a way. So it's definitely that's very nice to see, and it is also going to be interesting if that will stay the same over the course of the season, taking out obviously the big three joining later on in this season, of course.
Yeah, most definitely. It was a great ride by Cameron Mason to end fourth. It's a shame that he just about couldn't stick with Van der Haar and Iserbyt, but he did overtake Vanthourenhout. It was, again, a bit of a worrying race by Vanthourenhout. In Maasmechelen he DNF'd. There's been no explanation for it. He refuses to comment on it. It's weird, but again today he was lighting it up at the front, and then the light just goes out on the penultimate ascent of the Koppenberg. It's just, he parks it, the lights are on in his head, but nobody's home by the looks of it, because he just parked it and that was game over. No sticking with Cameron Mason. It was just done for the day, and that was weird to see. Again, not a great sign ahead of the European Championships. But for Mason, yes, this is a course that suits him. I think he took the win here as a U23 2 seasons ago, or he might have finished second, but I do recall him taking the win here. So, yeah, it's a good course for him and definitely promising signs. And as you said, the level is very close. If you are on what, in my opinion, is the toughest course on the calendar, I think this is one of the 3 hardest cross races of the past 10 years. I'm interested to hear what you think about that. I have Namur 2019, Dendermonde 2020 from the top of my head as races that are harder than this. I cannot with certainty say any other name, but yeah, that the racing is close tells you a lot about the level. But what do you think? You have quite a lot of historical knowledge of cross yourself. What do you think? Where do you place this race in terms of difficulty?
It was quite tough, to be honest. I think that Koppenberg always is, with these kind of conditions, obviously it's even tougher. In some occasions it was unnecessary, a little bit tougher with how the course was built. I kind of remember Bau, but I don't know what year it was, but that was also a very a very hard course. The older course actually, not the new one that is on the bike park cited, but the older course was definitely if it was raining, it was a tough one. I don't know which one it was, but I think it was the one that Nys won against Thibau, but you have to hold me from that one. I'm not really sure, but I definitely think from the recent history that we have, definitely one of the tougher courses, if not the toughest, and toughest editions as well. It was super tough, and I think that, I commend all the riders for giving it all. Even the favorites for the European championships, there was not really a lot of saving. You couldn't really see that those guys were saving it up or something. They were just going at it. I'm not thinking too much on what is coming in the weekend. And, on a course like this, you don't have a choice really, because every time you have to put pressure on the pedals, you have to get off your bike, dismount, then go back on your bike again, have a run. And after all that you have done in the lap, at the end of the lap, you get the Koppenberg and you still have to cross those cobbles. So it's, it's super tough. It's very hard, and the circumstances made it even worse. And for the men's race, it was even some rain during the race, actually. So it was, definitely a race where you watch from home and look at it and be like, wow, I'm happy that I'm inside. I'm happy that it's a bit warmer where I am at. And I have to do with the riders that had to, had to be there in the cold and race it out there.
Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Thibau Nys took the win ahead of his teammate Lars van der Haar and Iserbyt. Cameron Mason ended 4th ahead of Michael van Vanthourenhout and Toon van der Bos. We saw Corné van Kessel come in 7th for the Deesjacht Hens Maas team. Thijs Aerts ended 8th ahead of Thomas Mien, and Dander Looks ended 10th. He had a great start, but then had all sorts of issues with his bike, and I think one time his bike wasn't ready in the pits. Lots of walking on the Koppenberg. It was not great, but it was still better than the race of Pim Ronhaar, who ended 11th. This is the 3rd time in 4 crosses we see it. Issam Ronhaar at the front for the first couple of laps, in this case a single lap, and then he just completely plummets down the order. 11th? It's not a good look at all. Do you have any clue what's up there?
I wish, because I would have told him, and then he knows for the next time, because it's like I said, it happens now a little bit too often in the last couple of races, and you can kind of see it coming, where you see a rider that just going a little bit too fast at the start, and then you're like, okay, well that is something that he will feel at the end of the race, but this time he tried to follow Nys a little bit, but I don't think it was something out of the ordinary. It was just him trying to pace himself as good as possible in the first half of the race. Then he had that small issue where he got stuck, and then he had to get his foot out of it, and he continued later on. It seemed all fine, and then he just faded completely, and that was all she wrote. So I don't understand what's going on there. I think you always, with these type of performances, you have to take in consideration that it's early in the season, he's young, but you also have to realize that despite his age, he is getting to a point where, you have to showcase a little bit of consistency here and there, and you have to get your results in. And I think this is not really helping him, but, we have to be a little bit patient with him, and I think the talent is there. He's someone with great potential. On a very good day, can definitely have a very good result. So we have to wait and see when that is coming out. But I think we have to be a bit patient. It will come out eventually. I don't think this is something that we will see for the rest of the season, or at least I hope for his sake, because that's definitely not going to be a very good cause.
I've seen some people speculate that after that issue he knew the podium was out of his reach and he just saved for the weekend, but I don't really believe there's much saving on a course like this. They were riding the Koppenberg on their smallest gear. A couple of riders even high up the ranks were walking. This is not a course where you can save yourself. You can't ride up the Koppenberg at 80% or in a smaller gear. You're just grinding, you're going all out. Most of the rest of the course, there was quite a lot of running, and when you're running, sure, there's a difference between sprinting or just the moderate pace they normally keep, but saving yourself is going to involve walking, and then you might as well just pull out of the race. So I don't think he was saving himself. I think if you're saving yourself, you pull out like Jens Adams did, or you just don't come to the start like Laurens Zweek did. But yeah, it was not a good look for him. And then a final comment on the rest of the top 10. It's nice to see a couple of names like Thijs Aerts and Corné van Kessel in the top 10, but I don't attach any value to it. I mean, a lot of riders from the second row didn't take the start here. No Joris Nieuwhuis, for instance, no Niels van der Putten, you can name them. They weren't here, so it's just logical that they end up there. Then on to the women's race, and I can be very short in my summary. Fem van Empel had the fastest start, and within 2.5 minutes she had distanced herself from the rest of the pack and went for victory. That also meant that by 2.5 minutes, Denise Betsema was roughly in second place. Maybe it took 3.5 minutes for her to get there and distance her from the rest. And Betsema went to a second place. There was a bit more going on for the third place. For a while we had Annemarie Worst and Aniek van Alphen there. They faded, and whilst that happened, Kim van der Steene and Anna Kay moved up through the field. They were together for a while, but going into the final, out of 3 laps, Anna Kay distanced herself from van der Steene and took a super surprising third place. So surprising that she didn't even bring her podium shoes, Issam. It must be some sort of unique selling point that she was on there without socks, but in her racing shoes.
A missed opportunity, to be honest, to not mention the brand of the missing shoes, to be honest. I think that was definitely a missed opportunity. If that happened in an American sport, that would never have been slide. You will always have mentioned the brand, but getting back on the racing itself, I think it was definitely a surprise. For me, it was definitely a surprise when I saw the starting field before the race. I thought, maybe a top 5 is possible for Kay, but there needs to happen a lot of things in the race for her to be on the podium. But I for her, it's definitely encouraging that she gets that podium. She was very happy with it, and I would definitely see no reason why you shouldn't be happy with this podium spot. It was a fairly earned podium spot, and it was not due to circumstances of others. Maybe they had a bad day, but still, it was from her side a very good race. She had to hold off Van der Steen, and in the end did that with flair. So I think that for her it was a very strong race, and I think a race that you kind of need in a season, because if you race around that 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th spot, or maybe even outside of the top 10, sometimes it's you can still say to yourself, I had a very good day and this and that, but in the end it's not. It doesn't result in anything amazing. It's not going to give you a boost mentally, and eventually you kind of just end up, you don't really see the results. And I think with a podium, it's just something that you can hold on a little bit longer, and it just helps massively, I would think, for a rider to work with and to keep that and have the motivation in the further weekends. So I definitely love to see it, and it was a great race from her side.
Most definitely, and she is not a rider who has historically done well on the Koppenberg, so it's a pleasant surprise, especially with the running. She has short legs. I know you've told me that if you're a bit lighter, you have a bit of an advantage running here because of not only gravity, but also you're less stuck in the mud. But nevertheless, Kay ending third here is a positive for her. She's in her contract year. She needs this. She needs these type of performances to get an extension at her current team, which is without a doubt either folding or finding a new team sponsor from the 1st of January 2025. So that's the midway point of next season. But I can equally be positive about Kim van der Steene. It's a wonderful story. 37-year-old rider who is the mom of 3 children. She works on a farm. She has her own farm. She won the Koppenbergcross, was not at all prepared for the pressure and media attention that came with it. She also won in Boom. She had a depression after that. She had a lot of mental issues. She's now racing for a team called Never Give Up, powered by Jolien Verschuren, which is a former winner of this race, multiple time winner, who unfortunately died because of a brain tumor. there's just so much feel good about this to see her do well, and it's a shame that there's only 3 spots on the podium, because it would have been so nice to see her up there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. During the race, actually, I was like, no way, this is actually possible that the podium spot is becoming realistic at this point. In the end, Kay was just a little bit that tad too strong, and it was not possible. But I still, nevertheless, a super result. Of course, you can say, yeah, but the field and this and that, but you still, even with the field that we had today, it was still kind of, in my opinion, at least, out of reach to finish within the first 5. So I think that this is a very good result, and you have to take those opportunities. This is a race that suits her well. This is a race that she likes, and then you just have to go for it, and you have to try to make the best out of it. The level of Van Empel is definitely a bit untouchable at this point, but these are the type of races that you have to score, and she did, perfectly. Very good race, very strong, and seemed completely in her element, and that was great to see.
Yeah, and we can't really go past that display of power, technique, class by Van Empel today either. It's she deserves some attention for it, because she is just simply the best cyclocross rider in the world at the moment, and that she takes the win here, it's not surprising. She said, well, I didn't wake up that fit, but I still just hope to drop the rest as soon as possible. Well, we know Van Empel, she likes to downplay the expectations, but it's clear that she is by far the best rider. But at the same time, I think that a rider like Alvarado, who skips this race because it's not something for her, made a wise decision for her on a personal note. I still think Van Empel will win. It won't bother her that much. But if you look how deep a rider like Van Alphen needed to go, and how she was in the mud, laying on the cold ground after that race, you will definitely be feeling that, because tomorrow is a long day of travel. Some might have already left from the Koppenberg and drove a bit tonight, but it's not ideal recovery. It's a long travel day. You're going to be worrying. There's a storm raging across this part of Europe right now. Those mobile homes, you better hope that they do not blow away on the highway, because anyway, it's just going to be a bit of stressful day, a long travel day. It's not going to be amazing, and the racing is already on Saturday. Van Alphen and Vorst both were relatively disappointing today, and they are going to definitely be feeling some of this at the European Championships.
Yeah, I definitely think that there is an advantage in that part, and there was some discussion beforehand on if it was a smart idea to race or not, and I personally think, especially for the women, that it was not. There's not much benefit racing here if you're not really going for the classification, and even if you're going for the classification, it's much better to take that 5-minute loss, not having that hassle of going towards the race and do the whole complete race day, which takes a lot of energy out of you, and especially a course like Koppenberg, where we are discussing if it's one of the toughest races in the last 10 years maybe, then I don't think it's a bad idea to skip it and greater your chances going into Saturday. But like you said, I think it will probably bring her a bit closer to Van Empel, but I think that the point still stands that Van Empel at the moment is just that better, and that is not going to change with skipping one race, because in the end I think that Van Empel can, she didn't go full 100% on this course in the end, and she looked quite okay after the racing, so I think that it's not going to be of great influence going into Saturday.
Regarding the most difficult races of the past 10 years, I think you were referring to Baal 2013. That was not the year that we had the battle with Nys and Stibar, but when Pauwels won, it was super muddy. I think Valkenburg 2018 Worlds should absolutely be in that list. That might be the most difficult one out of them all. That was a course as atypical as the Koppenberg in super muddy conditions. But because of that reason, that this course is so atypical, Vorst and Van Alphen, I think, should not be too worried heading towards those European Championships. And someone who is not heading there is Denise Betsema. I think she's been listening to our podcast. She is actually taking some rest, training, recovering from that crash that she had, hit badly by the by a car when she was training. It's a wise decision, and she says, well, if I don't take a break now, the consequences were more severe than I thought. It's gonna hamper me the rest of the season. So, wise decision by somebody who still ended runner-up today. Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Van Empel with a win ahead of Betsema K. van der Steene. Strong 5th place for Kiona Krabbe, racing for Proximus, overtook the cyclocross red duo of Van Alphen and Vorst, who ended 6th and 7th towards the end of the race. Disappointing result for Sanne Kant, who has obtained some sort of injury from an incident in the Super Prestige in Ruddervoorde. Jana Dobbelare ended 9th and Joyce van der Beek completed the top 10. Again, very thin start field here. Issam, I don't really think there is much to discuss. I mean, Kant disappointing, but not a course for her and injured as said. So I have a final question for you, Issam. Do you think that sometimes when you're watching a cyclocross race, you're watching like a comedy sketch? Because what are we doing today? We have a hill, it's muddy, riders are racing between inflatable ducks, they race for duck prizes, and then you just have the spectators. There's a couple of people enjoying themselves on the inside of a corner, jumping from behind the banner to surprise the people watching on TV. In the final lap, they lift one of their mates and pretend he's a rocket. Then after the race, we see some young man hanging onto a pole, and then probably his girlfriend, or maybe not his girlfriend, just a girl comes and helps him, gives him the hand. He desperately hangs on to her, trying to make it up the Koppenberg. It feels like I'm watching some sort of comedy sketch on HBO Max or Netflix.
You know, I most of the time struggle to explain it to people that have never watched it, and then be like, yeah, so what is this cyclocross all about? And then you end up tuning in on those moments. You know, it's very niche in a way, I would say, and I think it has this charm around it. It's a beautiful sport, and you know, I think those moments are part of it, and they are they make the sport of what it is today. That is how the sport was. That is how the sport will be, and we always are talking about that the sport has to change in a way in terms of calendar and all these type of things, and that means that you obviously have to change it there. But I don't think certain elements are definitely there. Should be covered and should be staying within the sport. I think that it is important to keep some of the heritage of the sport in, but also look into other avenues and try to grow the sport even more. I think it's in the end important for the sustainability of the sport in the long run. But it's a beautiful sport, and it showed again with great broadcasting and camera work from the guys there at the course.
Yeah, the randomness is part of what makes cross great, as it is a real people sport. Although, I'm not gonna get into that. There's an interesting discussion to be held about that, but that's for another day. Issam, thank you for being here.
I almost dragged you in it, huh? Thank you for having me.
Almost. You know how to push my buttons.
Thank you for having me, man.
We will be back tomorrow with a podcast that we already recorded, a preview podcast for the European Championships. We recorded it yesterday, but most of our takes still stand. That will be coming to you tomorrow, and then this weekend, of course, podcasts from the Men Elite, Women Elite, Men U23 and Women U23 European Championships in Pontchâteau. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.